Hi,
Hello,
I'm Julian.
and I'm Tom.
We are Team Binge. We're here to talk about Severance, Season 2, Episode 7. This episode was called Chikai Bardo, Tom, which I will be struggling through the rest of the episode, but
You did great.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you, sir. We did watch this episode in its entirety. I enjoyed this episode. It gives you a lot of backstory on Gemma and Mark and who they are and their relationship. As I watched it, I thought to myself, I bet there is a lot of stuff in here that I'm missing that I should be paying attention to. Instead, I'm just going to watch it as a beautiful love story with some medical procedure in between. So, Tom, I'm going to rely on you as we podcast about this in order to fill in some of the blanks because I know you're a gumshoe and you pay attention to these types of things. But I did enjoy this episode. There were times that it was a little bit slow, but artful, and so I enjoyed it quite a bit.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more, man. Like, such a fun episode to get. Like, I mean, we got a lot of answers, right? Like, still plenty of questions, but we got a lot of answers of like what's going on the testing floor. So we see this one's directed actually by Jessica Lee Gagne, who is the kind of lead cinematographer for the show. I don't know if it's necessarily her directorial debut, but you can definitely see her flair on the episode with, I think, a lot of these like quick cuts to your point about there's plenty of things you can probably pause and kind of catch. But I loved her style and I thought it was just brilliant. And even like the flashback scenes, I think they're all actually shot on film, listening to like the official Severance podcast, which I think is a cool, unique way to kind of differentiate when we're in flashback versus when we're in kind of real time. And then finally getting like more I think it's Dietchen Lockman. But man, is she just absolutely phenomenal as Gemma, and seeing her kind of cook in this episode, and man, just see the horrors that she's having to endure down there was wild, but such a fun episode.
Okay, so you've said a couple of things, and I'm gonna touch three of them, maybe. I don't know. One, if someone had said, "Hey, this is a French film that like is very art house," I would have believed you. I've been like, "Great." So everything you've said tracks so far. Two, you said, "Hey, we got a lot of answers this episode." My first thought was, "We did? What answers?" Three, like we see her going into these rooms, and like there's the dentistry one, and I guess the Christmas one as well. Excuse me, Tom, I'm getting choked up. Just thinking about Christmas morning and what it means to me. And writing all those thank you letters that my parents forced me to write left-handed because they wanted me to be a lefty instead of a righty, like a normal kid.
Naturally.
I guess I have questions about what you found as answers in terms of each one of these rooms is just like a simulated room where she's put into it and we see like what her emotional response is when she comes out of it, or she's subject to, because part of me is like, oh no, each one of these rooms is some sort of torture. She's getting a cavity removed or put in. What do you do with cavities, Tom? You put them into teeth, I believe? Yeah, I'm not a dentist. So I guess I'm interested to know as we talk through this what you felt like were answers. And I don't know that I had a ton of questions because this is the first time we've actually seen this floor, right?
Yes, and I feel like that's where I would go in terms of answers, because we've had so much mystery of what is in this basement of this red, black hallway with this red arrow pointing down, where they've called it like the exports hall. We kind of come to realize this is like the testing hall or testing floor, and knowing that what appears to be like Gemma is alive, and I don't know, this is essentially well down there, but she's alive and she's being experimented on. I would argue almost being tortured down there. And then kind of seeing some of the naming conventions of all these rooms that she has down there and how they kind of correlate to what they're doing in macro data refinement. So it doesn't answer it fully, but I think we get a lot more to be able to kind of chew on as we try to dissect the overarching mystery of the show.
Sure, and I'm being unfair. You're right, we do get answers, but they were answers to questions I didn't have because I didn't know what was going on down there. But as you just commented, like the other answer we've gotten is, you mentioned Gemma alive. Not only is Gemma alive, but she has memories. Like it's not like a Gemma clone. It is exactly. Gemma having memories, misses Mark, and eventually tries to escape to get to Mark. So You're right. I'm wrong. There were answers. They just weren't the answers I was looking for, like who beat that seal to death out in the forest, That was kind of my main mystery. But It is what it is. Let's dive into it, Tom. We get a lovely meet cute in the beginning. And shout out to Barrett, who made the correlation, and maybe you did before Barrett reached out to us. But Barrett, you need to slow it on the emails. I read this before I watched the episode, bro. So please.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert, thanks. But giving blood is one of the most romantic situations according to TV shows.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a classic meet cute, which Barrett had referenced in email via The Office. Michael Scott kind of runs into that lady and tries to find her glove. I think it was like on Valentine's Day. So that was actually my immediate thought too going into this. Like, it's fun.
I hate giving blood, Tom. It's one of the worst things to see your life force slowly leave your arm through a see-through tube. I don't care for it.
Well, I don't give it. Like, I let them take it, but then I take it home with me.
Oh,
it's always good to have a little bit of extra blood around. You never know.
Yeah, I've had questions when I've opened your refrigerator what those bags were. I thought it was ketchup, and that explains why that hot dog was so disgusting when we had that barbecue. Gross. Did we know they were professors? I think we knew he was a teacher at some point. It's referenced, but I don't know that we knew they were both professors or both teachers, right?
Yeah, I can't remember the backstory from season 1. It's been so removed since I saw it. But yeah, I get that they're both professors and this is how they kind of meet. I like even the dialogue they have here where Mark eventually says, like, sorry, who are you? Which is the same line he gives to Helly in the first season, like the start of the season, where he's kind of like on the microphone saying, who are you? Like, that was a kind of a cool little deal. And then even right away here, we see the Lumen logo on this equipment to be able to draw their blood. So like right away, it's just like menacing. We know Lumen is like a big medical company, but the idea that they now have their blood and who knows what nefarious things they could be doing with it is kind of frightening.
Right. They could hang it in their fridge and make people think it's ketchup. All kinds of nefarious things. So Mark's pickup line is just, sorry, who are you? Does that work in real life, Tom? Do we need to have...
That work for him, man.
Apparently. His great loves, Gemma and Helly. There's a parallel here that as we're doing like the medical stuff in the real world, or like in the flashback, I guess, we are also getting this testing and the medical things that are happening to Gemma. So there's this fun parallel where she's getting her blood drawn and she says, where did you go? So I'm assuming this flashback is Gemma's flashback, correct? It's not Mark's?
I don't know. I mean, I don't know if we have to take specifically like who's seeing the flashback, or if it's just us as viewers, because the other thing is like Mark is kind of unconscious to this whole episode and he kind of wakes up with the memories of Gemma. So I would imagine some of these flashbacks maybe we're getting from Mark's perspective are his, kind of in his fugue state.
Tom, do you and your spouse ever dream the same dreams?
I don't think so. Do you?
Yes, all the time. All right, so then we have Ragabi and Devin. Because Mark's reintegration has gone so terribly. He's got rabies. He's foaming at the mouth. Ragabi was like, oh, I knew I should have cleaned those needles. And so Devin is just shouting at her because they don't know. She doesn't know who she is. This all leads to Ragabi explaining that Mark is reintegrating that Gemma is alive, and this is a lot for Devin to handle.
Well, I just love how like hot Devin comes in here in support of her brother, like, what are you doing, all this kind of stuff, and kind of her realization that if Gemma is alive, because she even like says like, hey, don't mess with me, don't toy with me, and she's kind of distraught and trying to figure out, man, what they happen. And I do like the Devin Ragabi we kind of get sprinkled in throughout the episode and how they, I guess, decide what to do next.
So, Tom, you only have in the real world brothers, and I in the real world only have brothers. I think this is a different in relationship with sisters and brothers. Devin is like very concerned for Mark. If we had run in on this situation, we'd be like, hey, can I draw on his face? And can you make him do something funny so I can take a picture? That's the difference between brothers and sisters. I wouldn't have come in that hot to support my brother. I would have just been like, oh, can I see his brain? Is there a way for me to look at it? So we cut from there and we're back with Gemma, and this nurse looked very familiar to me, but I could not place where I knew her from.
Yeah, it's the Sandra Bernhard. So I think her most famous role, you probably know her from, is like Roseanne. She was on that for however long that show ran. I think she's done a handful of movies that I can't recall. Roseanne is where I picture her from, but fun to see her because I think she's obviously more of a comedic presence, and I think she is a stand-up comic. So to see her here, like more straight-laced, is pretty cool, and like I would almost argue like more menacing when you have a picture of somebody being like a funny person, but they're just not playing it for this show.
Oh, you didn't find her funny in this episode? I found her hilarious.
No.
I was laughing. I wasn't reading or doing my calisthenics or eating, but I was laughing. So the way they shoot this, it is fun how you are trying to get a bead on what they are doing with Gemma. And like, is this some sort of commune? Is this some sort of like medical procedure where they are testing to make sure she can like do something else? Are they sending her to the moon? Like all that astronaut stuff that they're putting her through. I thought was very interesting. And also you're trying to get a read on whether or not she's really Gemma or whether or not, as we've thought, she was just some sort of clone or, I don't know, skin bag full of blood and bones.
Yeah. Well, the other thing interesting to think about is she's getting this test and everything, and obviously we follow her the whole episode. They kind of show the hallway when we get to it, and there seems like there might be another door over there. So my wonder is Gemma really the only person on this floor that's getting tested, or is your thought that there's at least one or maybe a host of other kind of test subjects?
I have no idea, Tom. I can only see what the show gives me. And to coordinate walking down those long hallways as a single person, all these nurses would have to have like walkie-talkies because you'd be like, hey, I'm leaving Cold Harbor. I'm headed to Allentown. Don't let your patient out. So I don't know. I got the sense that this is the amount of attention that's given to Mark in the real world would make me to believe that coincides with all the attention is being given to Gemma in the Down, Down, Deep.
That's fair. Nice, good silo reference.
Yeah. Well, this does kind of feel like a silo. This is everything that people went into before they were sent to the silo. There's a weird, and I love to get a breakdown of all these psychological questions that are asked during this show, but the nurse is like, hey, you're in a mudslide during this moment. Are you more afraid of suffocating or drowning? And I would be like, I don't know. Those are pretty similar. Can I take neither? Can I ride the mudslide on like a surfboard? But we find out that drowning is the answer, I guess. She's like, correct, drowning.
Yeah.
I'm fascinated to know if they ever explain any of this stuff to us.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing that comes to mind is the opening credits has that shot of like the car in like the pond or the ice pond or whatever, and maybe it's reminiscent of her drowning. But the more we get from this episode, I think it's pretty clear that Lumen faked her death, right? And they just took her seemingly not by force, like she voluntarily came to this facility, not knowing obviously everything, but maybe as a means for fertility treatment or something else. But so it kind of takes away my idea that she actually did drown as part of her death, or we've seen obviously Mark say that she was burned. So I don't know if this is supposed to correlate to anything that might have happened to her, but it's an odd question for sure.
It is an odd question, and now you are bringing up a good point. So let's just talk about it now, Tom. After this episode, she is in on her fake death in order to join Lumen in whatever this is, right? Is that weird?
I don't know if she's in on her fake death, but I think she doesn't seem, I mean, she's clearly a prisoner here, but she seems to be doing much of this stuff voluntarily as Gemma.
It started voluntary, and then over time, realizing what's going on, she wants to leave. As with most prisoners. I'm told that when you go to prison, when you initially get there, you're like, hey, I volunteered for this. This is great. You make new friends. You like join a gang. You guys learn the handshake. And then after a little while, you're like, hey, you know what? I'd actually like my freedom. That's why prison reform is a thing, is because after a while it gets a little boring. I've never been to prison, Tom. This is just when I write those prisoners via that magazine. This is what I'm told.
Nice.
But
this is where I think where we get some answers, but we still have questions. Like, why did Gemma really do this? So
why the 6 rooms, Tom? Why the 6 rooms? What's this all about? We see 2 of the rooms, right? Do we get any more than 2 of the rooms?
I think we get Allentown and Wellington are the only 2 we get into, like the dentist and the Christmas room. Everything else is maybe kind of implied. Or I guess we don't know the name of it, but she does do that like brief stint in an airplane, which didn't seem fun. But yeah, I don't know.
Disagree. Seemed dope. Based on what's happening in the news right now, a simulated airplane crash sounds awesome.
Oh, goodness. But yeah, like I guess there's only so much time in the day of how many she's went into. But this is the interesting thing that's wild about this episode is that she's being severed so many times here. And she seems like each severed experience she has in these rooms is all contained, right? So she's severed at multiple levels. It's not just Gemma out of a room and then her in an Allentown room. Like when she's in the Allentown room, that is the only persona she knows, which is just taking this concept of severance to a wild and whole new level.
Right. Instead of just at the elevator, every time she walks into a room, we get that cool zoom shot where we're like, okay, her brain's done something. Tom, there were written words on the screen, so I started to frantically write them into our notes. I wrote down Allentown, Cairns, Drainsville, Loveland, Wellington, and then I was like, I'm a grown man. I don't have time for this, and I stopped writing them. You're the sleuth. Did these names mean anything?
Yeah, so I think we get a cut later when it kind of shows like those watchers or other micro data refinement guys that are kind of like huddling around their computers. But I think we see on the screen these names correlate to all these different rooms that Gemma is going to. And I think we see at least 25 different rooms, but there might be more. But they do correspond to like earlier in the season, I think last season, as they're scrolling through the computer, like when Mark first logs on to do his macro data refinement, he's like scrolling through a digital Rolodex and he sees some of these names and then he sees Cold Harbor and stops. And that's what he starts doing his refinement on. And if you look at most of these, I think they're kind of like at 100% completion. And I think even in the first season, we do see that one of the rooms that he goes into, I think it's Allentown, that one is one that Mark like fully macro data refined in the first season and like got a reward for finishing that room. So I think, yeah, that's just kind of the correlation, I think, to these names, these rooms. It's part of what macro data refinement is doing.
Okay. And when you say that, you mean the file at like the bottom of the computer screen that all the numbers dump into, those are labeled these different room names?
No, there's like essentially before that screen pops up with like all the numbers everywhere and then the little 5 buckets on the bottom, there's like a little digital Rolodex that he's kind of scrolling through. So it's kind of a quick cut. You can easily miss it, but yeah, that's when these names pop up.
Computers are incredible, huh? Just what
Amazing.
They can do with technology these days. Do you love the dentist? Do you kind of like the dentist, or are you infatuated with going to the dentist? Those are your 3 choices.
I don't mind the dentist, if I'm being honest. I feel like when I was a kid, it was always that
choices.
thing.
I don't know. I don't understand why you cannot just play the game. I gave you 3 choices, and you chose none of them. What is
give
your
them to me
deal?
again. Give me
I don't
again.
remember them. It was hours ago. Come on. All right. Do you like when your dentist walks in whistling the wreck of Edmund Fitzgerald?
No, that doesn't sound pleasant.
It wasn't a choice either. Golly, you're terrible at this game.
But we do find out that this guy, it's Dr. Maurer, and we've seen him in the previous episode, right, where we didn't see his face, but we saw him going down to O&D to get those dental instruments and then bring them back up. And this guy's played by Robbie Benson, which he seemed like he had a very familiar face, but I looked at his IMDb and nothing jumped out at me. But he does do the voice for the Beast from Beauty and the Beast, like the original animated version, which I thought was super cool.
Interesting. Yeah, I thought the Beast got a bad rap in that show.
Exactly.
He shouldn't have gotten stabbed. He should have murdered all those villagers, especially the ones that were book reading. You know, who needs that?
Yeah.
Didn't like this in terms of Gemma comes in and she immediately goes, I don't want to be here. Can I have a break? I was just here. this actress is doing phenomenal work of making me feel terrible for whatever's about to happen, even though it is just the dentist. But I guess if you're severed and every time you walk into a room, that's like the last thing you remember, I
Right.
can't imagine just continuously walking into the dentist's office, even though I'm infatuated with the dentist's office. And the dentist is like, oh, it hasn't been that long. It's been 6 weeks, which we know from Milchick and all this other severed stuff that time, when they tell you a time, they're most certainly lying, right?
Yeah, I think that's fair. But I'm with you, man. Like, she just looks absolutely horrified in this scene. It is rough to watch. But it made me think, like, and I think we see it throughout as she goes and visits other rooms. But even in this first one, the idea of Severance and what Lumen is doing is likely to try to block out any sort of trauma, right? So, like painful experiences, trauma, whatever it is. So, in this instance, people don't like going to the dentist. So, the idea being Lumen can flip a switch, you don't have to experience it, and then you can kind of come back to your real world. That's my assumption of kind of what they're doing, because obviously you have the plane incident, you have writing a bunch of cards, like doing mundane, meaningful tasks. That's kind of what they're getting to as part of, I don't know, to sell the chip, to sell it to Congress, whatever they're doing.
Oh, I get what you're saying. So you're saying all of these testing rooms are what we in daily life like fear and consider stressful. They're putting her through all of those. So people don't like to go to the dentist. People don't like dying in airplane crashes, and
Yeah.
people don't like writing thank you notes on Christmas for a present that they certainly don't want and seems unnecessary. Electric degrouter in this situation. And
Yeah.
so the idea is when she comes out of those rooms, they are asking her, hey, like, do you remember what happened in there or where the pain came from? And when she answers no, they're like, Eureka, we've done it. We've removed human pain from the human experience, which, Tom, I don't know much about this type of thing, but when you take human pain from human experience, something tells me you're going to have a bad time. You know what I mean?
Yes, I tend to agree.
I think those experiences make us who we are, which I wonder if there's a way that Severance could take away the painful experience of podcasting with you and delivering you a game with answers you're supposed to choose and you not playing the game, because that to me is a painful and stressful experience.
Listen, man, leaders make their own paths.
Oh, wow. Do you have a kitten hanging off a fan in your room or like a poster? Where did you just read
Fan?
that motto from? Isn't
That
that
poor cat.
Is the cat hanging from the fan? The fan's like on high? Isn't that no? Am I thinking of I'm thinking of a different internet meme. Just hold on there, buddy.
I do want to mention though, the other big thing that they gave us a lot, I think, in like the previously on, because there was a big long thing at the start of this episode, was like the pregnancy that I think it was like the senator or a congressman's wife like went through, where she was severed for it and essentially didn't know, but kind of came back and just had a kid. So again, just another play on that concept of blocking out these traumatic, painful experiences in your life could be the benefit of this thing.
I'm so glad we've talked this out, because I did not get any of this while watching the show, and you have done a fabulous job of illuminating. You're a Illuminite, to say the least, my friend.
Oh, thank you. That means a lot.
So we see on the wall as she's walking Cold Harbor, and I put an exclamation mark behind it. And I think the camera kind of zooms in just so dum-dums like me make sure that we notice it. So Cold Harbor is one of these rooms. So are we assuming each room is a traumatic experience?
I don't
Cold
know
Harbor
for sure.
the death of a spouse? Is that the traumatic experience that we're working on for Cold Harbor?
I think that's a fair assessment. I mean, because it's got to be something big. Because this is the only one they haven't done. Seemingly all these other rooms have gotten it fully to 100%, whatever that means. So I think that's an interesting take.
Okay. I'm going to chalk it up as you think I'm right, and you're surprised. You've been dazzled by my brilliance. That's what
Yes.
typically happens when you respond in that non-committal way. Speaking of non-committal, we have a long montage of Mark and Gemma committing. They're working together. They're loving together. They're academics, let's just say. They're listening to records. There's a lot of like hard cuts between memories. And did I get a migraine from this? No. Was I close to getting a migraine from this? No. Did I think maybe I'll get a migraine from this? Yes. Also, there was a French song playing, which seemed lovely.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like, I felt like while a cool montage of their budding relationship, the flowers, like, and her love for that. I'm sure we'll get more of it, but it was a bit seizure-inducing of a montage.
And they didn't even give us a warning, Tom.
No.
Whenever they don't give me the warning, I get a seizure. But if they give me the warning and I know it's coming, it's not that big of a deal, you know?
Your body preps.
We get our boy Rickon. Rickon shows up in this episode. Good to see him. Love to have him.
Oh man, he's great. He's a avid outdoorsman, rock climber. I love it.
Oh, he was born bouldering or something like that. I don't know. This was very funny. Like, is this the same Rickon in terms of, like, this Rickon's kind of rad and then the other Rickon is a little bit more lame? Or is this just what happens when you're an avid rock climber? You eventually go to write self-help books that are a little bit weird.
I don't know. Like, I feel like Rickon wasn't necessarily much different, but I feel like the biggest difference here is just Mark, right? Like, he seems like a completely different person and is just more alive and in tune with the moment, as opposed to obviously the one that we've seen in the show that's lost his wife. It's just very interesting to see. And like, the other thing to mention too, as we get to these flashbacks, like all the color and like just scenery is just so wildly different from anything we've seen in the show so far, which just kind of goes and plays on the concept of this town, world, whatever we're living in is just wildly different from, past experiences.
Sure. The color of falling in love and finding a soulmate as opposed to going to a soulless job where the walls are white and the lights are bright. Yeah, Correct. I understood. This was symbolism I could understand from the show. We also see that, like, Devin and Rickon seem to be getting along. My spouse pointed out that in these flashbacks, they took away that dumb wig that Mark wears, that Adam Scott wears for most of the show. They gave him
I think it's just his hair, man. I think he's just got dope hair.
No, I think you're wrong. I think they put him in like a weird emo wig when he's sad at Severance. We find out that as they have been trying, because he bought a crib, which was a bold move by Mark, but I appreciate it. That she is pregnant, so we have a very uplifting moment, and we're happy for them. And then we have a very sad moment where we apparently have had a miscarriage, and this was terrible.
Yeah, it's all just heart-wrenching and emotional, but I mean, goodness, is it so wonderfully shot? And like even the way the scene ends with her or them kind of both together in the shower, and then it kind of reverses time, and the water kind of comes up their face, and then as Mark kind of comes back into reality and sees Gemma in the severed floor, it was just harsh and brutal and just incredible. And that's why I think you get from Jessica Lee Garnier as the cinematographer, like both her cinematography and direction, I thought was just next level in this episode.
Yeah, I feel like this is the type of episode that gets an Emmy, so they should submit it to the Academy. I don't know how any of that works. Give them a nighttime Emmy or a daytime Emmy. I don't know. Or a morning Emmy, something like that.
Brunch Emmy.
Oh, I love brunch. It's time for brunch right now, Tom. Let's hurry up. All right, so the reveal of while our data refiners are working at their computers, there is a camera on the other side and a seeming doppelganger on the other side of the computer, almost like interacting with them through the computer. I found this fascinating because the people on the other side kind of match physically. I said doppelganger already, but I'll use it again. It wasn't like a perfect match, but they like match who they're paired up against, and they're responding to the data refiners, how they are interacting. And it almost felt like they were paying attention to like facial recognition, facial emotions, that sort of thing. So, Tom, take the floor. Explain to me everything that's happening here. I will accept nothing short of a full answer and solution.
Oh, I got you, buddy. I mean, the camera angles that show these computers essentially connected, I thought was quite fascinating. The idea that they are so closely resembling their innies made me immediately think of our Orpo episode and kind of their doppelgangers that they kind of saw that were pointing the way. Like, is it potentially these people? I mean, that to me is kind of the only thing that would make sense if we're not going to do this like clone concept or
Sure.
whatever else. But I think these guys are referred to, I don't know, I saw an internet video where they referred to them as like the Watchers. So I don't know if that's their official names, but you got Drummond over there just kind of constantly looking over their shoulder, watching what they're doing. Man, just a cool new nugget to the show that I loved.
Sure. And Drummond says, "Is the Severance barrier holding?" And I was like, "Sir, this is not a spaceship. What's going on here?" What I'm assuming is that as they're experiencing, I don't know, emotions or whatever it is they're monitoring, they're just seeing whether or not the Severance holds or their old self comes through. Is that what we're guessing?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, all this testing they're doing on Gemma is like, does she remember things as she goes from room to room, which she doesn't appear to be. And I think in like the first season when they had Gemma actually come to the severed floor as Miss Casey and work with Mark, like that was the big test. Like, can the severed barrier hold? And they still don't know that they were in a relationship, married, all that kind of stuff. So I'm assuming that's kind of what they're referencing here, right? Because this is pre Miss Chase coming to the floor. This is kind of beginning of them testing this concept. I don't know. Well, I guess it's not, right? Because the Watchers were watching our innies. I don't know.
Tom, I'm going to help you out here. I think you said Chase. I think you mean Casey.
Did I say Chase? Oh, this is your fault, man. Miss Casey.
Yeah, don't email us. All right. We cut back to the flashback, and we are in a doctor's office. And I guess I thought initially it was maybe adoption, but it sounds like it's like in vitro, like pregnancy help, which you noted some details in this office that I did not.
Yes, like on the little form that she's filling out, it actually says like Lumen Fertility Clinic. So that's what she's there for. And if you actually do catch it, it happens very quickly, but you can see Dr. Marr in the background, like the dentist or doctor guy that's working with Gemma. You can see him kind of walking there. So he was clearly early involved in whatever Lumen was doing in their shenanigans. I also thought it was, I don't know if this means anything. My wife clocked it and I thought it was a good point about you see her write her name on the form, but then she's actively writing her last name, but her like hand is covering it and they don't show what she's writing. It just almost seems purposeful. I don't know if it means anything because it's Miss Scout or Gemma Scout. We kind of already know her last name, or we think we know Mark's last name. But I just wanted to clock that because maybe that will come back.
Yeah, no. I think it was definitely purposeful. Tom, this is going to be a silly question, but I'm going to rely on you to answer it seriously and not laugh at me. Dr. Maurer, is it the same guy in the Christmas room, the dentist room, and then who does kind of like the doctor exam at the end of the episode that she hits with the chair? Is that the same guy?
He's essentially playing like he's doing costume changes just like much like Gemma is, where she's putting on wigs and different dresses and outfits. Like he's putting on mustaches, beards, all sorts of fun stuff.
Okay, so he's the guy that played Dr. Evil, and he's the Mike Myers, not the stabby Mike Myers from the Halloween movies, but the Mike Myers that does all the funny characters. Gotcha. Dr. Maurer, the Mike Myers of Lumen. Okay.
And I think it's an important note because we see kind of later on, he's kind of almost like fallen in love with her and almost forces her to say, "I love you" in that Christmas scene.
Yeah. Who wouldn't, you know? She's phenomenal at dentistry. Being dentistried on, I guess, would be the term. That's how it's said.
Sure.
And during this examination with the good doctor, he asks those questions about like which room made your mouth hurt, how many rooms, and she's just not remembering anything. And so I think this goes back to Tom. At the beginning, I told you we didn't get any answers, but I think we've got all the answers now. So good on you.
You're welcome. Listen, I left this episode not knowing a lot, and I was like, it took me a while to kind of digest this, watch an internet video or two to realize what the heck just happened in this episode. But we're getting there.
The issue is once we stop podcasting, we're severed, and so we'll never remember all of these things. We already talked about her going into all of the other rooms, but not Cold Harbor. I think it's interesting. She clocks this, right? Because she says to the doctor, "Hey, why have I been in all the other rooms but Cold Harbor?" And the doctor's like, "Soon you'll be ready." And something about siring something for the world. I found anytime someone says siring, I get a little bit uncomfortable, you know?
Well, I feel like the verbiage was very purposeful because a lot of what we see in these flashbacks is Gemma and Mark struggling to have a child. And the idea of like siring is very much associated with childbirth. We've seen in the opening credits this concept of like a baby Kier. Like, I think there's some internet theory crafting out there that Gemma is going to potentially be used to try to maybe have the reincarnated baby of Kier. So I don't know, because she was obviously in the Lumen system early on. Maybe she was chosen for whatever reason to be able to bring Kier and his consciousness back into life.
Sure. Okay. Well, that's terrifying.
Yes.
Especially if it's all against your will.
Yes.
He makes some comment about Kier is going to take away your pain just like he took away Mark's pain. And the moment I realized Gemma was not like a robot or a clone is when she goes, "Can you please talk like a normal person?" And I thought that was just a great moment.
I love it. It's like very much like a show, not showism, but like everybody watching the show and the writers and people making it know how annoying and cryptic these kind of comments can be. So having like an actor just directly forcibly say, just talk like a regular person, it's fun and great. I love the line.
Right.
But going back real quickly to your line about like, Kier will take away Mark's pain, he'll take away yours. I mean, I think this just goes back to the concept of what Lumen might be trying to do with these severance chips, where it can literally, it's not like they're going to kill them. It's like they can quote unquote kill the kind of the pain inside of them.
Sure. We get a quick cut back to Devin and Dr. Ragabi arguing about like what to do with Mark. And for some reason, Devin's go-to is, "I'm going to call Miss Cobell." And I was like, oh, she's coming back? I think she might be coming back. But
well, yeah, it's like listed in her phone as Miss Selvig. So I can't remember what their relationship was or if Mark told her anything about them, like her being both in the severed floor and their neighbor, which is kind of weird.
Yeah, she did, because Miss Cobell or Severed they thought she took Devin's baby for a little while.
Oh, okay. Yeah. But Ragabi is like very adamant about like, hey, Cobell, she's a soldier. She was raised by Lumen in the system. Like, if you call her, I am gone.
Interesting. She's coming back, right? We talked about this last episode.
Yeah, Patricia Arquette has to come back, and I think even in some trailers that I saw for the for this season, I think I've seen her in some other scenes we haven't seen yet. So yeah, she's got to be back.
Wonderful. Then we're back with Mark and Gemma, and Gemma has those printed cards where I think Dylan stole one. Is that right, or did Mark steal one from Optics?
I think it was Dylan that had it, but yeah, and I don't know the extent of like how she got them. She makes mention, oh, these were mailed to me. Maybe I signed up for something when I did the fertility thing. So I don't know what the greater purpose of them are, but I think the cards are reminiscent of the title of this episode, the Chikai Bardo, which I guess is a Buddhist term that refers to the fourth and final stage of Bardo, or like a transitional period between death and rebirth. So, I mean, very poignant and on the nose here of the concept of, potentially Gemma's rebirth and death.
Sure. And you just pulled that knowledge right out of your brain. You typically...
of course. You didn't know that?
Yeah. You were we used to call you Mr. Bardo because of all the chika you used to do.
Well, you've been stuck on the second stage of Bardo for a long time now.
Yeah. Which one's that? Death? Yeah, you bet. We'll all get there. Okay. So we get a sense that this is all, and we've seen this throughout, like Lumen has deep pockets and a long reach in terms of they've gone into this facility. Even from the blood test, Lumen has been involved. And so it is not hard to theorize that she was sent these cards in order to... He almost treats him like... he's like, oh, it's weird that you're doing that. Like, he's uncomfortable with it. Right. And you get the sense that it's almost like when two married people who have been together a while and one starts to buy into either like a conspiracy or a religion, and they're like, oh, I thought you didn't believe in that stuff, and then they slowly are like getting more. That's kind of how I took the reaction between the two of them.
Yeah, I think they're just also showing us the kind of disconnect between them. And I think at a certain point, even in the scene, she says like, "Hey, I'm just tired," like because they've been trying, I think, to have a baby through in vitro for a while now, and it's tearing their relationship apart.
Okay. Quick cut. Gemma, I guess she's on an airline. Great hair, and this airline is very turbulent. Did not look like a great time.
I love the doctor here in the scene too, because I think he's got the big hair, he's got the big mustache, and I don't even think I even clocked it the first time I watched this of thinking that this was the same guy, but I think just like Gemma, he's dressed in all these outfits. And I do want to call out here, like this does seem like it's a plane from the 70s, and the timing of so much of this, even in the flashbacks of what time we are in the world, is still very up in the air.
Sure. I guess the other argument would be is if we're reconstituting Keir and he was from earlier, then you would want the person that is developing like the memories and the emotional reactions.
I like that.
I'm going to pull back from there because I like she is experiencing trauma and they're just trying to test out Severance as opposed to growing Keir. But I don't know. Can trauma go from mother to child if child is in womb? I don't know. This is stuff I don't want to have to think about. I wrote here he's at 97%. Why did I write that, Tom?
So this is when it does a quick cut, I think, to Drummond, and they're looking at the monitors. And like I kind of mentioned earlier, like most of them are at 100%. And I think they're actually looking at Cold Harbor and that it's stuck at 97%. And they make mention that his nosebleed brought us back a little bit. So, yeah.
They're waiting on Mark. So the he in this is Mark. And then there's a comment about, when he is gone, she'll need to go too. And you feel that the doctor is not on board with this a little bit.
Yeah, because they both mentioned like we have to do that for Keir. So what that really means, I don't know, but it still obviously just shows their loyalty to Keir as a kind of godlike figure to them. But like I mentioned earlier, I think this does seem more difficult for the doctor here because he has a growing attachment for her.
Sure. I love the call of, why are you wearing that stupid sweater? Which is great. Because then we have the Christmas scene where she is writing the thank you notes. And we talked about this. But yeah, it's, once again, just an unpleasant human event. You get a gift you don't like, you have to write thank you notes.
And I'm wondering, too, like all these different presents and things that are filling up these rooms, I imagine this is what O&D is doing. Like maybe they are crafting and developing all these things, to bring into this room for, and maybe not just this room, but everything else that's kind of being crafted for this world. Because we saw the dental tools go up there, and then now we see all these, what seems like 3D printed garbage gifts.
Listen, I hate to say it now, but Tom, I don't think they need a third season. I think we've got it. I think we've got the gist. I think we solved it today. I can't believe I said we got no answers out of this episode. You have been just laying down the answers. Like,
I'm glad. I'm glad I'm helping.
You filled the diaper with the answers,
Goodness.
All right. Mark is building a crib, and I'll Be Seeing You is playing. And Mark turns out not as handy as he thought.
Well, I think that was my initial impression, like watching the scene, he's building the crib. But I think the more heart-wrenching thing is that he's taking apart the crib, right? Like he had built it previous. They realized they're not going to have a kid. So he's disassembling it and just, losing it, which is understandable.
That's worse than what I thought. I was just like, remember all the times I had to put together IKEA furniture. That's kind of funny. This is less funny. In fact, now I'm just sad. Let's get out of this sadness, Tom, so that I can be severed and be happy again.
So I think we have a quick cut back to kind of the doctor's office where Dr. Maurer is kind of questioning Gemma, asking her about, what she's kind of been through. They make a mention of the Allentown and the Christmas room. And I mentioned at the top here, this is the room I think that Mark unlocked in season 1, which I thought was kind of a cool little callback. And from an internet video I was watching, apparently Allentown is Christine Taylor's hometown, which is Ben Stiller's wife, and also lead in Dodgeball. Sure. So I thought that's kind of a fun little clever tie-in from Stiller.
I believe it's Pennsylvania, maybe, I think.
Yeah. Oh.
All right. She's like, my hand hurts, and I want to go home. And this is when the doctor drops some harsh knowledge where he's like, your husband's remarried and he has a daughter. So we're pointing out two things. One, he gave up on you and he found someone else. And two, that person was fertile where you were not. And I found this doctor a hurtful, hateful person. And I am glad Gemma hit him with a chair.
Yeah, it was great. Might have been like a wrestling move. She takes the chair and just whacks him over the head with it.
Did not see this coming, Tom. Loved it. Did not see it coming. After the hit, Gemma takes off running, and I don't know. You just want her to escape, and instead she's running through this dark hallway, and we have all these like memories happening, I believe, around the same time. And this is, I guess, it's cutting back to the last night, right, before she allegedly dies.
Yeah, she kind of has that. I think this is when she gets in the elevator, because I think as she's running around, it's like I love this new testing floor where it's still Lumen, but it's just slightly different. Like the angles of the hallway are just unique. The lighting on the floor I thought was just so cool. As like you see the nurse kind of coming to find her, but you don't even see the nurse yet. You just kind of see the lights coming, and then as she books it towards the elevator, you see just the hallway, like the base of those lights come on. Just so cool, so brilliantly shot. But yeah, when she finally feels like, yes, I escaped, she's in the elevator going up, and then has those memories of, I guess, is this the memories of like the last time they essentially saw each other? And that she's going to charades, Mark chooses not to come for whatever reason, and kind of gets this bit about like forgetting to say I love you, and knowing as an audience like what's going to happen after this is tough to watch.
Sure. The charades are definitely with Rickon and Devin, right? That's why he doesn't want to go. He doesn't want to play charades with Rickon. Although I bet charades with Rickon would be rad. All right. She makes it on that elevator, and who stops her when she gets to the severed floor but one Mr. Milchick. And you can't escape if they control your brain, Tom. That's the conclusion, and this was a terrifying thought.
Oh, wildly terrifying. And like I think she's even trying to ask some questions like, oh, how long have I been here? Or I'm assuming she was going to ask for Mark. But like when Milchick runs to the door, he still has like his leather jacket on. He seems to be out of breath. So I'm assuming he got some sort of alert that, hey, she's coming down. You need to stop her.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, her changing to Miss Casey on a dime here and not being able to know, I mean, it's just horrifying. And then as she gets back in the elevator, Severs back to herself on the testing floor. I mean, just gut-wrenching.
Yeah. At the same time, they're like, hey, we'll give you the lighthearted shot of Mark getting the news that Gemma is dead because the cops are at the door. So very, very sad. And this leads to
Before you go on, I just want to call out like the scene and the way it was shot, because obviously they're not in the same time period here, but just showing both of these characters. And I think it kind of shows their silhouette, and then Mark kind of slowly fades out as it comes to Gemma. But just so well shot. The cinematography, again, absolutely incredible. And just showing both of these characters in this hopeless moment is brutal.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks, cinematographer, for making us hurt in our souls. Really nice of you.
Yes.
Mark wakes up. He is hurting in the soul. And we have, I guess, Devin is like, hey, where did you go? And you have these memories of Gemma. And there's like a single tear falling down his eye. And then the show's like, life's hopeless. Here are the credits. Boom.
Yeah. Rough way to end it. But yeah, I mean, I guess Mark obviously went through a big step in his reintegration here. So maybe some of these like flashbacks, memories, everything else was kind of coming from him. But I'm hopeful that now Mark, he's gotten to a new stage of reintegration and will be able to remember some of this stuff. Because again, I want to be able to get to a point where Mark does have all these memories and can go back and forth with more ease, because it is just so hard to watch him struggle through all of this.
I agree. I just want to mention the woman who plays Gemma, Miss Casey, is doing a phenomenal job, and I'm glad that we get more of that character. And now I'm very invested in their love story, and I don't care about Helly and Mark at all. I'm a Gemma. I'm a Gemma and Mark guy now.
Yeah, Deacon Lockman again is her name. Fantastic.
Thank you.
Have you recognized her for anything, by the way, outside of this?
Nope. Not
I think she was in a show Altered Carbon that I watched a while back. I think I have that right.
I read the books. I didn't watch
but
the show.
Incredible.
Yeah. Tom, before we leave here and we go to our third degree yellow belt class where we learn Chikai Bardo. Both of us holding, once again, third degree yellow belts in that. Let's tell people where they can reach us, which is teambingepodcast@gmail.com. Whatever we got wrong, our inbox is open to you. Please, if you've got wild theories, I love wild theories, especially when they're right. You can send them to us there. Tom, what else?
Yeah, follow us on the socials at Team Binge or at Team Binge Podcast. If you are enjoying our show, please rate and review us. It helps grow the show and show it to other audiences. So yeah, fun episode. I think we've got 10 episodes this season, right? So we've got 3 more. Excited to see where we take it.
I don't need them. We've got it covered. I think we solved it. So
Got it.
For Team Binge, completely Chicago Bardoed out. I have been Julian.
And I have been Tom. Till next week, everybody.